Well, why though community? We are back with another awesome Let's Talk panel. This time, our awesome topic is going to be Let's Talk Manga Localization and Practices in the Community. I'm Olive Sansevier, also known as Olive the Manga, ALLOVTHE Manga. And I am accompanied today by some awesome people who work in localization and familiar with the manga community here. We've got the lovely David Evelyn, a translator, predominantly working on Undead, Unluck right now, right?
Yep, Undead, Unluck, and Kaiju number 8.
Yes, Kaiju number 8.
Yep,
and we've got Mercedez Clewis, who also is working on translation, quality assurance, and editing. Hi, Mercedez.
Hi.
And then we've got the awesome ThatCMonster, creator of the Webtoon No Such Thing, and also works in convention work and translation.
Hi.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Good to be here.
Yeah. I'm so excited for today. I've been wanting to talk and share a panel and learn more about localization because I think it's something that a lot of people who are fans of manga hear a lot about and you see people talk about on Twitter, but kind of unless you're at a convention and get to sit down in a convention room panel, you sometimes don't necessarily get to hear a lot about that process. So that brings me to the first big question. What is localization? And because there's so many probably facets to it, what is it specifically to you?
Anybody want to go first?
I was going to say you can go first, David.
Oh, okay. Just throw me under the bus, huh?
Look,
right, that's fine. Hey, I don't care. Localization to me is literally translation. Translation and localization go hand in hand. They sit at the same table, so you can't really have a translation without a localization. It's just like the varying degrees of how localized you're willing to make something, or how localized something wants to be made. To me, it's a process, it's a creative process, and it's about as creative as any form of writing or art or anything like that. It's just that it serves a greater purpose, and in most cases it's to make something applicable to another audience because you're going from one culture to another. So to me, localization is translation.
Yeah. I think going off of that, I think a lot of it is creative because you are adapting something from another language. And I'm a strong believer, there's nothing in Japanese that can't be translated and worked. It's just a matter of working with it. But it's kind of like playing with Play-Doh. Like you're kind of making it into a different shape, the same shape, maybe a different color. And I think localization and translation can also be a bit of accessibility. It's access to something that people can't. Obviously, if you don't speak Japanese, you can't access it. It's access to things that are maybe older or, are harder just to physically access. It's preservation to a degree. And I say that I come from a history and museum studies background. So it is kind of partially preservation for me, but it's kind of a lot of things. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
I think it's taking something from a literal space and then moving it into a new cultural and linguistic space. One thing my Japanese professors always reiterated to me was that nothing can be directly translated from Japanese into English in its literal sense. Because the cultural context and then the literal way in which sentences are sometimes formed, and even down to the words themselves in some cases, can't be literally moved from one thing to another. They have to be culturally translated. They have to be, properly organized in ways that we understand.
Right.
You see a lot of complaints of well, in the Japanese, it didn't say this thing really specifically. And it's well, yeah, but you're looking at Japanese, which is predominantly contextual, and then you're turning that into a contextualized slang term that is now put into a context that is this anime that's also being put into the context of this scene between these two characters interacting and their relationship with each other. And then the culture in which it was made, and then the authorial intent behind the phrase or the sentence or the interaction. And and now we have to take all of that and put it into an English speaking context.
Yeah. And
So,
into like a tiny word bubble.
Yeah, into like a tiny word bubble.
Yeah.
So it's like you're translating a lot of things. And I feel like the challenge with Japanese is that because it's so highly contextual, you really have to keep that in mind while moving it into an English speaking space.
And
Right.
also because Japanese is more information per, character, right? You can have one character that just means like a thing. We don't have that in English. English is an alphabet-based language. Japanese is mora-based. It's basically it's syllables. So we don't have that kind of freedom. Like you can have something that is 2 kanji long into a bubble, and it's like, okay, that's just, I guess, a sentence, or it could be a phrase or anything like that. In English, everyone's pulling their hair out, and they're just like, oh my god, now I have to put this in here, and then like you gotta wonder like how to do that. It's like, oh well, now I just right? And
Exactly.
out of their minds, pulling hair out. Dogs and cats living together in total anarchy, and it's just awful. But I mean, localization is a lot more than just like, well, that's not what it said in Japanese, because well, it is Japanese and this is English, so you're not going to get a 1-for-1. I mean, if you really, really are that particular about it, you can learn the language like many of us have, and read it yourself. And I encourage people to do that, because if you want to get rid of me, if you want to get rid of the middleman from the equation, i.e. me and my cohorts, we can just learn it. I mean,
right. And that's the thing, is like, it is about readability also, because like, no one wants to read a 1-to-1 of anything. No. It's not good. It's not good. It's just not good.
Yeah.
Like it's just not good. And I mean,
could you imagine literally translating yabai?
It would be
dangerous.
It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good at all.
It would be dangerous.
It would be yabai.
Yeah.
Oh, it'd be yabai. Oh, it'd be so yabai. Oh, danger.
Yabai.
Oh, so yabai everywhere. Cho yabai.
Cho yabai.
Yabai.
I feel like, especially since yabai is used for like so many things nowadays,
right. It's flexible.
Like, wow, this ramen's really good, and someone would be like, yabai.
Yabit.
Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want your ramen to be dangerous. Like,
Danger
you want your ramen to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, and that's just the evolution of language. So
right.
Go Mercedes.
Oh, I was gonna say yabai is such a good example, because you never hear, like, when it comes to localization, like, you never hear people say in English like, oh, this is a misuse of the language, because it's flexible. Japanese is the same. It's just living outside. If you don't live in the culture, if you don't engage in it, you may not notice that it's flexible. That's why you can have things like stan or yabai being awesome or wicked or sick or horrible. It's flexible too. All languages are.
Yeah, I think because that's what I've been thinking this whole time hearing you all talk, is just we're talking specifically, obviously, Japanese to English right now, but in a broader context, popular works get localized to so many different language all over. Nothing's going to be a 1-to-1. Just for reasons, I think we don't see certain novels like 1Q84 having people go word by word and be like, this is not what it said.
Yeah.
And things like that. But in manga, it seems that there's a more, I don't want to say nitpicky, but
I think people feel very vocal and strong.
Yes.
I think that without insulting anyone, without insulting their views, they are very strong and opinionated, because there's been a history of like, there's, censorship, but these are all examples from like 20 years ago from companies that don't even effing exist anymore. Like, they're long dead and buried in the ocean. So it's like, but they still hold this grudge, and then it's like a grudge that kind of like transfers over to like other generations. So then they take upon them like, oh well, they were censoring, Sailor Moon got censored, like, and they made lesbians cousins, and it's just like, that was 20 years ago. You weren't even born.
Right.
You weren't even born.
But there's also too the American censorship laws that people had to work around, and that's something.
And it's everywhere. It's not just America, right?
Well, and I know we're going a little bit into like, LGBTQ media,
right?
In internationally, but like there have been
See, we have like an additional guest.
Murphy has
Party
an
crasher.
opinion.
Murphy has an opinion on
Party crasher, dude.
no
This is
opinion on
his
gays,
panel now.
Murph?
All right.
But no, but it's one of those things where like you were not only dealing with you know, the Japanese censorship boards,
Right.
but you were also dealing with American censorship boards 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Which were encouraging things like translating onigiri into
Right.
jelly donut because children would not understand a rice ball.
They
and
even
that's-
changed the art in Full Metal Alchemist because
Right.
they were like, oh my God, the parent school board is going to lose their mind. It's anti-religious and all that.
Look, and
But
that's
things
what I
evolved
think
over
a lot
20
of
years.
I think a lot of people forget, like, it has only really been like 2 decades since a lot of very heavy, the Japanese are super mysterious and we can't understand them, those wacky kooky people. And I'm please no, I'm saying that facetiously because like Japanese people are as normal as, you know, the sun rising in the sky. But I think people forget it's only really been 2 decades that whole wacky kooky Japan thing has been dropped in lieu of maybe being more critical of Japan as an actual country. And so with that, translation and localization is going to change. Like you're not going to have all of these, not red tape, what's the expression I want? Walls?
Oh, barriers?
Thank you. Barriers. You're not going to have all these barriers trying to keep Japan, you know, locked into this very specific image. I mean, that's why we're getting some of the stuff we are localized, right? Is like there's interest that extends past just cool Japan and pop culture Japan.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that manga is even coming out in such a glut, like it's amazing because like it had its like little boom, but that was more of a, you know, it fizzles out and it's gone kind of period. But now it's in a very almost stable place where all these different publishers who aren't, you know, like your Tokyo Pops or your like whatever, you know, random, you know, like ACB, you know, publishing, you know, some dude out of his basement based out of California or something. But like now it's just like everybody is getting a piece of the pie and it's actually becoming somewhat of a sustainable business model to have like manga as, you know, in, you know, for companies. And that would not have been heard of. They would have been like, we can't put this out, it loses money.
Yeah.
But now it's, you know,
it's mainstream now. And it's great. It's amazing that it is.
Yeah, it's great.
Marvel even announced that they were going to start releasing some of their series that they released in Japan. Now they're bringing over as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And like that absolutely wouldn't have been possible. Like, I don't even know if that would have been possible 10 years ago.
I'm not sure.
Which is weird because I do know 10 years ago is like 2011, but it was different. It was just
the bubble kind of popped around then though, a little before that.
Yeah, because you had the late 2000s, which I mean, a moment of silence for how rough they were.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know,
all the volumes lost and out of print.
I mean,
exactly.
I'll never finish D and Angel. Never.
Oh, so many things just cut off in their prime.
Yeah, by Tokyo.
But there, R.I.P.
Yeah.
But there were so many. I mean, it was considered a niche within a niche.
Yeah.
And anime and manga was considered this hyper niche medium that just couldn't possibly translate internationally, and honestly, particularly to English speaking markets. Like there was just this unspoken assumption that English speaking markets just would not understand content coming over from Japan. And I honestly think it was really Disney bringing Ghibli fully under its umbrella and translating, dubbing, and distributing those films at such a high level that really broke that wall down and allowed other publishers to start taking risks.
Yeah. Yeah, because I you know, but that I think like when you think of Ghibli, like Disney did that. Disney walked. So like we could have Weathering with You in a theater. And I mean, you know, I
said this the other day on my channel while we were reading One Piece, but I feel like in a lot of ways too, 4 kids jelly donutted so we could onigiri.
I mean, when Brock looked at those and said they were jelly, when Brock looked at those and said that those were jelly donuts, like we are 20 years. And
We've come so
Towards-
far.
Brock squinted extra hard, and he was like, "I jelly donated so you could
Onigiri.
onigiri and my hoo-ha or whatever."
On that
In my-
warm localization note, on the
Yeah.
lovely
Naruto
localization note of
ne.
onigiri and jelly donuts,
Yeah.
to bring back real quick, what does a day of work generally look like for you all?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, it's waking up, and I have a whiteboard right here. You probably can't see it off of camera, but there's also one behind me too. There's my calendar. And I looked at what I have to do, and then I give a little cry, and I sit on the toilet naked. And then after that, I come back into my room and I ponder at my desk, and I'm like, what do I want to work on first? And then cry again, about 10 minutes. And after that, then I start working on my manga. Usually, I mean, like, it can depend on how many projects I have a day. I don't just do manga. I do visual novels and games and all other kinds of stuff that clients who will actually pay me I'll do. So like depending on the work day and depending on like when I wake up, because sometimes I go into the late night and then I wake up in the early morning. Oh wait, I'll go into the late night and wake up in the afternoon. I'm sorry, or I'll go to sleep early and I'll wake up in the early morning in order to get a start on the day. But you know, just and especially on Simul Club days where I get my stuff for Undead Unluck and Kaiju number 8. Kaiju number 8 has like its own little like schedule now, and it's had its own little schedule because it's technically a web only series. Undead Unluck always publishes on Monday, every Monday in Shonen Jump in Japan, so we get it Sunday. So I have to. I'm usually given like 2 or 3 days, a week ahead of where everyone else is, to translate that, and then usually it doesn't take me more than like 2 days, maybe a day to like look it over, like translate it and look it over. Then I spend another day like trying to like see what I'm missing or whatever, and then I hand it in. But usually I just work all day. So.
Do you find a lot of differences between working on manga and visual novels?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of differences, but it's you just have to get used to them. Like I worked on visual novels, regular novels, manga. I've worked on anime before. I've worked on like the whole swath of like Japanese English media that I can really think of. And like they all have their own different rules. Like visual novels, you have to worry about and especially visual novels and games. There are other weird things you have to worry about, like text overflow and like all this other like maybe it has character limits, or there's like some weird thing with the engine that doesn't accept certain characters, so you can't use there's no like thing to make italics, or like there's no thing to make whatever, or and with manga it's just like I'm the artist and I did not expect for this to come out to English speaking audiences or the world, so I made a bubble that's about this big and you have a word that's about this long. It's like, all right, well, cool. All right, time to 50 Hail Marys, and I'm gonna try and do this. But yeah, they all have their own challenges, in my opinion.
Thank God for letterers.
Yeah, thank God for letterers. Shouts out to the legend Brandon Bovia. He does.
Don't
Brandon
get started on
Bovia's
Brandon.
work.
Oh my God,
legend.
Brandon
Listen,
and Sarah.
He's Sarah too. They're both
Them good fonts.
They're awesome. They're global icon and national treasure, both of them. So I would.
What about you, Mercedes?
So it depends on what I'm on. So right now I do mostly editing, proofreading, and QA. I'm an early riser, so I'm usually up around 5:30. If not 5:30, I'm usually up before 6:30. I usually work about 7 hours a day. I do everything is laid out in Google Calendar because I alternate between my work with translation and localization, and also my work as a journalist and writer. So I kind of split the day, but generally it's always checking emails. There's always emails. Just checking what I need. One of my clients that I edit for, they'll send me usually work in bulk, and I'll have maybe a week and a half to get it done. And so it's just downloading the files. I have my little setup with my iPad Pro, loaded up into iBooks, going through and just like very meticulously catching general errors. I have to say I'm that person that like I could send you a 20-page Google Doc, which I did recently get in trouble for. I was told it was a little intimidating and then I needed to keep it to 5 pages. But just like very meticulously going through and noting kerning and text size, font size. Do the eyes have a crossbar if they're at the beginning of a word, if they're a separate eye, and just things like that. Getting all that together, collating all my notes with screenshots, sending it off. That's kind of a typical day right now. And then interspersing that with anime reviews, feature articles, kind of whatever's needs to be written, and then editing elsewhere. So
Full
busy
days.
day. Full days.
Busy.
Full days, full Google Calendar.
ThatCMonster?
So, most of the translating work I've done is in person. So I actually, though I did go to school for like localization and stuff like that, my specialization was actually in business Japanese. So I eventually moved on to, translating for guests at conventions and things like that, sometimes during live performances and stuff. Not a ton, honestly, not like a ton of. Why when I start talking, is it time? Uh, but so my job is actually I'm a content manager. So that's what I do. I help businesses manage and grow their social media accounts and content and consult for, influencers and stuff like that. So that's kind of what my job is. But translation wise though, I have gotten to do a few fun opportunities. I've gotten to take over guests to Japan and act as a tour guide and a liaison between them and the business that they were engaging with. And I've helped out a couple of influencers navigate Japan and help tell them where to go, book all of their fun, cafe stays and stuff like that they do their filming at. Get permission to film in certain locations because Japan is really strict about filming. So I've often acted as a third party. Even if I haven't been attending the influencer actually in the country, I've still done a lot of their coordination and navigating, navigating the cultural landscape. I've also helped with getting permission from studios to make YouTube videos that feature some of their content, especially probably about 5 years ago. This was really difficult to do. In the last, honestly, in the last 2 to 3 years, it's gotten really easy to make YouTube videos of manga and anime and, use little screen snippets and caps and not immediately get hit with that copyright strike.
The wave
You
that
used
hit a
to
couple
have
years back.
yeah, you used to have to reach out directly to the company and be like, this is my account, this is how many followers I have, this is my revenue conversion. I would love to engage in a sponsorship deal in which I can utilize your, images in exchange for promoting your manga, your anime, whatever content that you're creating and stuff like that. So that's something I've done a lot of. A lot of things I've also done has been I think a lot of cultural translation is a big part of what I've done as somebody who engages in live translation person to person. So, hey, fake name, Sarah. You can't eat chips loudly on the train. That's inappropriate. When we go to this business meeting, don't grab their hand and squeeze as hard as you can and stare at them directly in the eye with, that weird crazy eye that some American business people will give each other. Don't do that. That would be incredibly rude. When we go
Not
and
doing that here too.
it's weird here too, but there's this tacit acceptance of okay, we're in a business setting and some people kind of do that. And you just make a mental note of it. But in Japan, it's a little different. That could be the company will now ghost you. They are no longer interested in doing business with this influencer.
I think that no one should do that. No one should be getting the panic stare for just having a handshake, you know.
I don't think so either. Especially in Japan, Americans come off particularly manic when they do that. I'm not trying to misappropriate a mental health term. We genuinely do come off like, oh,
Yeah.
Are you okay?
As a former coworker of mine in Japan told me, wow, Americans have a lot of emotion, don't they? I was like, oh God, yeah, we do.
It's all over our faces, but especially the handshake smile. That's probably one of the things that I've communicated about the most, weirdly. Because it's something that's been brought up by people on the Japanese business end, and it's something that's been like, oh, why were they upset on the American business end? Like, I feel something's off. What happened? And I'm like, well, maybe because you took their hand and went. It's really intimidating when you do that.
You know?
Oh my God. Yeah.
But so my workday in regards to translation would be highly sporadic. It would depend on if or when I got a person-to-person kind of job. In the meantime, though, I like to be educational in the RPGs that I play. So if we're playing an RPG that's set in Japan, like right now we're playing through the entire Yakuza series, we actually use it as a talking point for, like, you know, cultural knowledge and exchange. Because you would be surprised some of the weirdly blatant statements people will make, and they'll be like, yeah, Japanese people always do this at the discotheque. And I'm like, how do you're 12 and you're from here, how do you know? Like, why would you? Discotheques aren't even really a thing.
I was about to say, like
I was gonna
the
say,
discotheque.
That's 80s? Like saying I want to go to Japan and be a ganguro and go to all the tanning salons that are there, and you're like, well, that doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, unless you've got that time travel.
For a variety of reasons.
Unless they're taking a Shinkansen back to 1984, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh my God, the discotheque.
Discotheque. Hey, man, you want to go down to the discotheque and eat some 50 yen ramen? That'll be great.
With Takeshi and Mayadi?
Yeah.
Sorry, Genki book.
Wait, I was going to say, way to throw in that Genki.
What's Tekina Seta desu ne?
Yeah. Maybe we can see Beat Takeshi on the TV and can do the Komanechi. No?
Oh
Mandy should have never really cheated on Takeshi with Tom, and I'm just gonna.
I mean,
I'm still mad about it.
But we're not here for that Genki drama. But
another panel.
Don Juan Tomoshi.
Okay, so going off of that, then with the project, so for David and Mercedes, kind of how long do you generally work on a project before it gets announced? And then for ThatCMonster, kind of how long in advance do you generally know you're going to be translating for someone before it happens? So how much notice do you get?
I'll say typically my turnaround is about a week to a week and a half. My longest project was 12 weeks, and it was actually this year, and I have to talk around it. It was a visual novel, and so it was a very text-heavy visual novel. That and it was my first visual novel.
Oh, okay. Welcome to the jungle.
I loved it, but it was a lot of text. It's a lot of text. So
I didn't get these bags under my eyes just reading manga, all right?
Yeah. But it took about 12 weeks. So I started it February, ended in like May. Okay. About. But usually I'm on a pretty quick turnaround. And inside of like that week turnaround, if I have like perfect timing and the moon aligns and the stars are there, then I can like turn around a full volume of manga in a day, proofread. I don't like to do that because I'm meticulous, but if like someone was like, hey, you have 48 hours, which has happened, I can do that. But usually I get a week to a week and a half.
Are you usually assigned to a series like even before the license announcement happens?
So because of how I kind of jumped in, yes and no. So when it comes to doujinshi, yes. A lot of times I'm working on it before it gets announced. Or maybe I'm picking up in place of someone. When it comes to manga, it's usually been out. I'm just coming in on the volume, but then I'll be given the following volumes. So maybe, and because I don't know, I don't always know the situation of other proofreaders. It might be the case that they have been they're on a different title, whatever, maybe their own, ability to take on clients has changed. But for some of my stuff, I don't know, am I allowed to say company names? Is that okay?
I haven't read your contract. I don't know.
Yeah, that all depends on your NDA.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, okay, I mean, this company doesn't have an NDA, but it's a very big company in America.
We don't want to risk it for you.
Right. When I work with this company in America, and they put out light novels and manga fairly frequently. I do their manga right now. So like a lot of their stuff is already available as like chapters, and I come in and do the volume proofreading. And I might be QA1, I might be QA2. It just depends.
Yeah.
For that American company.
That American company I probably work for.
Yeah.
That I pretty much know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
But whatever.
It's America Company number 5, Dave.
Yeah. American Company number 5.
In no particular order.
Yeah. Manga Company. Well, I mean, going off of what Mercedes said, since I work, I'm kind of like in the trenches, like as a translator. It can really just depend. Like I've gotten series that have been announced, and I've gotten them that have already been announced, and I've gotten them. I've worked on series that have not been announced, and I've gotten them. And then the announcement comes out, and then I forget about it, and then I forget to hit my social and everything. What is that? And I'm like, all right, whatever. And then with simulpubs, usually with Jump simulpubs, you don't know what's going to happen with those. So they usually have like an idea to put them in the magazine, and then they ask a translator whether or not they want to work on it. So with Undead and Luck, I knew about it like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before it like debuted in Jump around January. And with Kaiju number 8, they already had like 5 chapters out, so me and the legend Brandon Bovia had to like bust ass on that, and we were like totally like we were sweating. It's like, man, this manga's got hands, right? We were like, oh, it was awful. But like with some series, like those are like simulpubs, and those are always like those are varying degrees of great and disaster, because like it can strike you at any moment. But with mangas, like with full volumes and stuff like that, I usually get like a little bit of a, sometimes, but not all the time, advance notice. And then with those, they can range from anywhere from like a month to 2 months to however long they'll let me translate stuff, because I like to be meticulous and I don't like to rush myself. So I know some people are just like, yeah, man, I got a volume of manga, and I just translated in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, all right, cool. Right. Like you enjoy that. I'll be over here chilling. I'm gonna chill my shoes off, and I'm gonna translate this in like maybe a month, because I don't want to like just like I want to give it at least as much time as it took to probably draw. Right, like I don't want to just poop it out and then like have people mad because like I used the wrong form of grizzly or something, like or some stupid typo that went past everyone's heads, and then I get blamed for it. And it's like in chapter 15 of Hentai no Go-Go, and it's like, oh, shut up. No. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Like it varies wildly.
And I should say, I forgot to say, I typically get stuff in batches. So like when I get stuff, I might get like 5 volumes of manga at once. And it'll just be like, hey, can you get this back in like 2 weeks? And I do get to pick and choose. Like if I can't do it, I can say no. However, I don't say no because
never say no.
Anxiety. But I usually get stuff in batches, and then it might be a little bit of a dry period, and then I'll get another big batch. So
that makes sense.
That sounds like freelance.
Yeah.
And what you were saying, David, kind of reminded me of like the best part of Webtoons, where there's like a small typo, and then that's like 50% of the comment section.
Oh yeah, it's always.
It's all about that one.
If there is a typo in any simulpub, you can just look at the comments. It's like, there's a typo here. There's a typo.
You missed an apostrophe.
We're human.
Yeah, suddenly everyone's like my 8th grade English teacher.
It's amazing. I like to imagine that there's somebody sitting there with like a Webtoon, a printout of a Webtoon, going over it with a red pen.
No, you say that, but that person absolutely
exists. I know they exist. And if you're watching this, hi.
Yeah.
Have a budding career.
I'm glad you have a hobby.
Yeah, they got the red marker and everything. Yeah.
I know you're Le Pen, but I've for me the work comes in weird. It's kind of a bizarre flow of work when you're doing in person to in person. I haven't done person to person professionally in a little while.
Huh?
I would say probably the shortest notice I got was when I was hired by Oh, Murphy!
Is everything okay?
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, and the dog is fine. He just collapsed my entire audio setup.
Oh no.
Oh
no.
You're coming in fine.
Yeah,
well, it's robust. This is why you go analog and then feed it digitally, because Murphy's just mad I'm not paying attention to him right now.
Because he's so cute.
He's so cute. He looks like a blanket and he behaves like a personal terrorist. I live in fear every day.
As you should.
Murphy has something to add. Murphy was like, I'm the one with the red pen and the printout in the middle of the night.
He looks like one of those Goombas from the Super Mario Brothers movie, but the dog head.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he is.
It's like the Pixar movie. You go to sleep and Murphy starts talking and like editing your Webtoon.
I can hear that's the murmuring that I'm hearing in the middle of the night. Murphy is actually a demonic familiar I did not ask for. That is very literature based.
Nice. I've had one of those before.
Murphy woke up and chose violence. I mean, Murphy goes to sleep and chooses violence. Like there's not a moment of peace.
That's true. That's very true.
God, that's so funny.
But like I think the shortest notice I ever got was I was hired by Anime Expo to host their night cafe event when it was in its infancy. And we were still doing burlesque shows, and we had one of Japan's #1 competitive strippers. And it was super cool. Like, it's a burlesque.
That's really awesome.
But
so cool.
Her name is Momoko, but if you look up Momoko Strip, I think is her name. I follow her over on Twitter, so you could be able to find her if you look through my followers.
I know of her for educational reasons.
See, I'm gonna refrain because, as we all know, I don't have luck Googling things.
Her kimono strip performance is amazing because she's wearing all of the full layers. And like she undoes it while she's hanging on with only like her legs. So she's hanging on essentially with her calves, and then she undoes the kimono and just lets it fan out everywhere. And
what's
it's
her
not
workout routine? Asking for a friend.
Her abs are like steel. She is so cool. But she was amazing to me. Really wonderful person. But they didn't have a translator for her.
So that's where you stepped in.
So I wound up translating for her for the entire event as part of my duties, but it was something I found out on stage because they did not tell me that she didn't speak any English, and I was not told, and she didn't have a translator, so that was where we were.
Wow, that must have been like really early Anime Expo. Like
it was a really on the spot, but fortunately she and I had wound up being able to communicate backstage for 2 to 3 hours before the show actually started.
Cool. So
I mean, as you guys know, for like on the spot translation work, sometimes if you're too on the spot, you forget both languages.
Yeah.
So fortunately I had been warmed up and my brain had gone back to the right conversational space It was very informal and rough, but we got it done.
Yeah. Well, and that's what counts in the end, isn't it? Is like sometimes just getting it done.
Another on the spot incident was I got a text from a mutual of mine, Wolfelden, who predominantly covers Nintendo content on Twitch and YouTube. And Papa Waffles sent me a text message. I was in Japan recording for a anime, and Papa Waffles sent me a text message, and he was like, "I'm here," and I was like, "Japan?" And he was like, "Let's hang out." And I was like, "Okay." So, and that wound up turning into Kato teaches Bob how to Japan. So
that's pretty on the spot.
That's awesome. That's
very on the spot.
That's about as on the spot as you can get.
Bob is wonderful. He talks with this really thick Long Island accent. And he was also trying to learn Japanese. But he was having a little trouble. So we wound up helping Bob. But listening to Bob go, Hitotsu, Date, Onegai, what? Kudasai.
Onegai kudasai?
Onegai kudasai. Also, Boku wa bobu desu.
Oh my god.
Boku wa bobu desu.
Boku wa bobu desu. I love hearing Japanese and American accents. It's magical.
I wanted to do that when I went to Japan. I wanted to speak in that katakoto like Japanese the entire time and see if anyone noticed, because my accent would be like that, but I would use vocabulary that was not, indicative to a beginner. So then it would just confuse. I would be like an anime character. Like you see, like, oh, the anime character came from America, and he's like, oh, me wa hamburger ga daisuki desu, and everyone's like, what the hell's going on? Right? That'd be kind of weird. I thought it'd be funny, but everyone said that would just confuse people.
I guess it is. It can be kind of confusing. There was in an exchange. If there's any of, I know there's a couple of my followers floating around in the chat, so they'll probably be familiar with this story, just as they were familiar with Bob. But there was a kid I did an exchange program with when I was in high school, and his name was Jordan Jaffe.
Okay.
And he was from like Texas, like middle of nowhere, oil field, Texas. So he had like this really long drawl.
Oh, the Doug Dimmadome.
But he insisted on speaking Japanese with the very same drawl. He could not put on a Nihongo accent for the life of him. So like when we went up to do our introductions, our like class introductions for like, these are the exchange students. Look how different they are.
Look at the freaks.
Jordan Jaffe went up there with his hands shoved in his pockets. Like we were all doing our very best, like Keigo that we learned on the spot. Like we're all going up there being like, and like doing our best accents. And Jordan Jaffe saunters up there with his hands in his pockets and goes, Boku no Name wa Jordan Jaffe did.
Oh my god, he straight up Tokyo drifted them. He straight up Tokyo drifted them though. Oh my god. He Tokyo drifted them.
Scruples.
Real quick, because this story kind of ties into what I was going to ask next, our fourth question, was if any of you had a favorite moment from your job, or opposite, the hardest moment.
A favorite moment. I mean, just generally, I'm sorry. That felt negative. That felt really negative. I did not mean that. I was thinking.
Okay.
Let's clarify. People, I don't have Twitch ups.
You really feel.
I don't have Twitch ups, so I don't know how anyone reacted.
Like flashbacks happening in your head as that was
going. Look. I don't know if anyone reacted to that negatively on Twitch. I like my job.
It's all lulz. Don't worry about it. It's all everyone's laughing.
Nothing bad ever happened.
I was thinking, I mean, I generally like editing. Like I'm that one person that like Oxford, Chicago style guide. Ooh, AP. It's all good. But if I had to go for a hardest moment, it's that it's really hard to read manga now because I'm hypercritical. If let that lettering be off. Let the font change. Let the page number be like 1 centimeter high. it's very hard, and like I don't read anything I edit. Like the visual novel I mentioned earlier, like when it comes out, I want a copy because I want to play, the parts I didn't work on, but it's going to be very hard because I will know exactly what I edited. And it's hard to I think the downside to intensely editing is like you become very aware of every mistake. And like the simple way is I just have to disconnect when I read manga. You just have to disconnect when you read.
So I'm not being accusatory, but I think we've got a lead on who Red Pen Hobbyist is. Red Pen Hobbyist.
It's not me. It's not me. It's not me. No.
If I don't think it's you, because you've said you have the power to disconnect, but maybe it's a disenfranchised translator creating sock accounts who can't disconnect
or like
from
plot,
their job.
Or plot twist, it is me. It's not though. Yeah, I mean, but I think that happens to anyone who like does something that is in print or even in some sort of digital format where you see it. It's hard not to critique. It's hard not to like flip through and be like, oh man, I could have done this or I could have suggested that. I know it happened with the first light novel that I was like the lead editor on. I bought a copy and I sat there and like took notes, and I had to stop myself because I was like, you can't change what's already done. You just have to do your best and like put it into the world for everyone to enjoy.
I know slightly different, but I think I even do something similar like with reviews is like with a few exceptions, I actively am like, okay, I can't review some of my all-time favorite series because it's just, we have to have a separation here.
That makes sense. I mean, you want to separate some things from others, I feel like.
But there's lots of good moments. There's lots of good moments. Let me make that clear. So many good moments.
Like
Oh, no. It's your turn, David.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's your turn, David. It's your turn. Quit calling
I had to get
out
you.
like
I had
this.
to get you.
Why?
No, I had to get you. I just had to get you.
That's
You're
so
like
mean.
you set yourself up for it, so I had to take the bait. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bully. No bullying here.
You're gonna make me cry.
I'm not trying to make anyone cry.
I'm gonna take my red pen to you.
Okay, well I already got one. All right, so
dang, and I
take this from me.
Okay.
All right, there's no bull here. But anyway, I'm sorry about that. So I think so there's a lot of things I could actually talk about, but like I think probably the most favorite thing I had from translating so far, well, I don't know so far, but like most recently, there was like a pun in Undead Unluck. It wasn't really even a pun. It's like a saying that it's like ai wa magokuro and koi wa shitakokoro. So it means like your love is sincere and infatuation is an ulterior motive. But it's based off of the kanji. Like the magokuro is like literally like the center heart, but I has heart in the middle, so that's like that. And then koi is shitagokoro, so it's underneath. And if you look at the kanji, it's also underneath. So that's just basically like hell. Like it should have been hell, but I actually sat there and I was like, okay, let me figure this out. So then I went with a rhyme. I went with true love is sincere, infatuation's mere veneer. So
that's cute.
Yeah, so
I
was very proud about that, and I I gave myself at least 2 pats on the back for that one.
That's nice.
Yeah, because it was like something that would have, and this is like a simulpub, by the way, so it's not like I can just like, oh, can I get another week for this? I'm like, no, you just gotta do something and then put it out there, poop it out, and then let it go. So I was very proud about that. What I wasn't too proud of, 2 other things. There was a series I was on called I Tell C. It was about
love I Tell C.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love it so much.
So good.
Gotta pour one out for it. Yeah.
It's so sad.
But the second to last chapter had the main culprit was a guy who was speaking very strangely, and I noticed it like the entire chapter. I'm like, why is he speaking so weird? And then at the very end, I realized the gimmick, and I had already translated all 19 pages. So I had to go back from the beginning and start over because his gimmick was that the very start of every sentence was a different syllable from the Japanese syllabary. So I, u, e, o, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, sa, shi, su, se, so. And not only that, I had to make sure that that rhyming scheme or that scheme followed in the English. So I had to like rewrite every sentence to make it follow the story or make it follow the dialogue into a certain degree, and also add like, you know, if this has a ka, it needs a ka in English. If it has a ki, it needs a ki in English. So I had to like, I ended up using like for tsu, I ended up using tsunami. I used a Japanese word for Japanese translation.
But English is the back alley mugger of languages, so that totally counts.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Yeah,
It's
it'll
so
definitely
true.
It'll just shank you one and then like leave you for dead
I'm
on the
gonna
ground.
steal your word.
Yeah, like it's fine as long as it makes sense. I got praised like the back end, like the copy desk and stuff like that. Were like, man, this is really good, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I was
feel like that'd be
sweating.
really challenging.
That would be a lot.
And the second one, now that was the worst one, but then there was another one that just was even worse because it happened after the fact. There was a chapter of Undead Unluck that came out, and there's a character that's like a monster. His name is Spring, and Spring is like, he's wearing like a yasha. He's like a yasha setup. He's drinking sake, and he's like very Japanesey. His dialogue was like, okay, this is fine. It's common stuff, and I just translated it straight, and then I submitted it, and then it got lettered and got published. Then I read through it in Japanese again, and I realized, oh, hey, 5, 7, 5,
oh no,
7, 7, 5, 7.
Oh no.
So he was speaking in Tanka the entire time, and I had no idea. So I quickly like called my editor's editor, and then like we were like, okay, we can get this fixed, thankfully. So I had to sit there and like rewrite all of his dialogue, like very patchwork wise, and I'm gonna fix this for the volumes. I'm gonna fix what we put up in the volumes, but I quickly did that. Like it was just like crazy awful, and I felt really bad because I was like, I didn't catch it while I was doing the work. I caught it after the release date on the next release date. Like, this sucks. So that was like two of my like heinous things working with like at least simulpubs. But yeah.
Now, do you have something good? Something that
Oh yeah, I already said in the beginning.
Oh wait,
dang.
oh dang.
It was overshadowed by the challenges.
He wrote a very nice
look, I was so focused on trying to one up you that I actually think I like forgot. Oh dang. That's on me. That's
you
fully
have a
on
sports
me.
anime rival moment. It's fine. Where you just kind of black out, like forgot.
Yeah.
Listen, don't worry about it. You can get me other ways. It doesn't have to be live.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I forgot we're live. Oops.
But yeah, those were like two of my moments. There's a ton of them. I have like a ton of like, but those are like the three that are most in my mind at the moment because they happen to like all three of the series that I'm on. Well, well, not Kaiju. Kaiju has other problems, but that's not indicative of like my translation or anything like that. It's like more scheduling things. But like, who wants to hear about that crap?
Everyone. No. Can I ask how each of you got involved and discovered localization and translation?
I mean, Twitter. for real though, like Twitter. Honestly. Absolutely Twitter. Yeah. Because I got into it because I asked the age-old question, what am I gonna do after I leave the JET program? So I should say up until August 2020, I lived in Japan for 4 years. I lived in the Tohoku region of Japan. That's like, you know, you got Tokyo, and it's the good region. It's my favorite region. And I lived in Fukushima Prefecture, which is very beautiful. And I had really developed my Japanese skills, had also developed my abilities with editing a lot.
Mm.
And last year, thanks to Jenny Latta over at Silicon Era, I was kind of guided into doing Japanese to English translation with writing articles.
Mm.
And, then the pandemic happened. Uh, and
Oh, that's
so,
unfortunate.
yeah. And like, by all means, no blame on anyone. Everyone was suffering last year. But unfortunately, things kind of fell through. And so I turned to Twitter and I was just like, I really want to do this. And I had already kind of put it out there as something I had wanted to do because it had kind of been one of those childhood dream things where I was like, oh gosh, that would be really cool. And then, kind of tucked it away. Um, and Twitter is what really helped me get into it. And that's what led me to working with Boys Love. I did a lot of my early work, and I should say I've only been doing this since October 2020 in earnest.
It's awesome.
Doing a lot though.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. But that's how I got to working with Boys Love Dojinshi, and that led me to doing some work with like drama CDs, which led me to doing a lot more proofreading and QA, which led me to working on a visual novel. And it kind of all compounded, but a lot of it was Twitter, and a lot of it was just like being very earnest and humble and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. Could someone please help me? And then paying that forward also on Twitter. Twitter is great sometimes.
It's
ThatCMonster?
pretty good.
Sorry.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say Twitter's good if you just stay away from certain corners.
Yeah.
No, I was just moving it forward to ThatCMonster so we can hit our Q&A section before our break.
For me, it wasn't. I mean, I went to school with the intention of it. I liked Japanese language. I like Japanese literature. What got me to kind of add on translation into my writing major was actually reading a translation of Natsuo Kirino's book. I just because one of our assignments was reading side by side original text and translation to see how the messages both literally and colloquially translated. So we would sometimes read multiple copies. But for Natsuo Kirino's work, the translation struck me because it kept the author's voice and intent. And so she writes a lot of crime and suspense. And especially for suspense and for things that are so subtle, especially when you're looking at cultural subtleties and subtleties of expression and subtleties of language while still keeping the rhythm and flow of the author's creative speech. That's really challenging to do. So I remember when I read that in English, it was one of the few things I had read that captivated me just as much in the English version as it did in its original language. So that was what got me sort of like, oh, it would be so cool to be able to do something like that. Naturally, that wasn't quite how it panned out for me. I went more in person, partially because a big challenge for me was keeping up with my literary ability in Japanese. I found that to be almost impossible while living in the States. Living in Japan, I found it was kind of simple in some ways to read and write. A lot of it was just exposure. And you kept up with it fairly easily because you were using it every single day. Even when I was in an academic setting, it was pretty easy to keep up my reading and writing in Japanese, because I was also taking historical linguistics classes and, writing essays and, using older historical Japanese text and translating those. And it was a lot easier to keep up. And then when I graduated, it just fell out of my daily life habit. And because of that, illiteracy eventually started to set in. My speaking abilities still stayed very solid, except for my Kegel, because I wound up never using it.
Yeah.
But my conversational ability stayed pretty fluid as long as I was using it, but my literary ability completely fell apart. And I have a lot of admiration for translators because I know how hard it is as a non-native speaker to keep that literacy and to hold on to it. Because in some ways, I feel like that's the hardest part. A lot of people say that your reading ability is the first thing to go when you leave Japan and you come to the States. Your reading and writing just tanks.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of awareness, I think, at some level to really keep it at the level it needs to be for translation work. So I have a lot of admiration for what you guys do, just because it's an ability
Gosh.
that and a dedication that always eluded me. Anyway,
Wow.
that's
Nice.
it.
High praise.
It's very high praise.
Yeah. I mean,
What
like,
reading is hard.
reading is hard. Reading's hard in English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I look at books and I'm like, man, I used to read these. No, I'm just kidding. I never read them.
I never read.
How did you then discover
I'm leaving.
translation?
Goodbye.
Oh my gosh.
No respect for the craft.
So well, I guess if we're gonna go back to like how I got into localization, you have to go back to like all the way back, I guess, because I kind of learned Japanese at an early age. Like I started learning from when I was around middle school, like 10, 11, 12. I can't
Wow.
remember.
Wow.
And that was all self-study because I was part Japanese, so I was like, oh, I should learn my roots. And that's kind of what took that up. And I was like, hey, Japanese stuff is kind of dope. I like Bomberman, like whatever. But like no, and I had like cultural stuff that kind of like was the inspiration for me to start doing stuff like that. So I was just like, oh, I'll start learning when I'm like in middle school, and maybe by the time I'm in high school, I'll be good enough to to speak. And I buzz. I use the internet like a lot. So back I used like old internet with like slow download speeds, like so I was using like chat rooms and all this other stuff I probably shouldn't have when I was a kid. And I got a whole bunch of resources, and I met a lot of people online, and they helped me. And combined with like the people that I knew IRL, that was kind of like it helped a lot. And that's when I started like doing fan translations and stuff like that. I started with fan translations, and I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh fan. Like, so I did a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh fan translations because it's actually very scant, like the amount of people that were doing that around that time. So that's where I kind of got the I built up a lot of skills that actually helped me later in life with technical translation. When I started doing that, like around the end of high school, into college, and I was doing technical translation for any. I was just freelancing. I was just like getting any jobs I could. Translated like machine like manuals and like some business documents and stuff like that. And I had I had stuff, and that's where I actually met one of my friends, who later on went to get me my job with Ms. Media.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was pure nepotism that I came on this industry. It was just 100%. Now he's like, hey man, well, first of all, he tried to get me a job at like 2013. He's just like, hey man, I got this thing for you. I'm gonna try and get you in. This is when he got out of college and he just got in there. He's like, hey man, let's work with something? I'm like, yeah, sure. At the time I had no real job and I was like broke. So he's just like, yeah man, I can get you in. Hold on. Let me give me like a week. So a week passed, nothing.
Oh no.
3 years passed, nothing. I
Oh.
found out what the project was. It was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh.
But he
Wow.
he ended up translating all 3 parts by himself. His my friend Evan Gallo, he's a legend. He that was his trial by fire with this. He's a legend. He still works there too. He's high up now or something like that. I'm a peon. I'm just like here in the trenches, but like he's actual people. But yeah, he's a great friend of mine. I owe the world to him. And if I hadn't got in with him, and also the people like at Sekai Project with my friend and owner Chris, and the founder, Ray. If I hadn't gotten in with them, that I wouldn't have gotten my foot in the door to begin with to translation. So yeah, manga translation has just always kind of been a thing I wanted to do because I wanted to be a mangaka. I wanted to be a manga artist, but several rejections later from companies who didn't want, like, I said my art wasn't, or my storytelling wasn't good enough, blah blah blah, this, that, and the third. So that's why I got to a level where I could actually, like, read and write Japanese to a point where I could, nowadays people think that I'm just some, like, Japanese dude cosplaying as an American online, which is very odd. I get all these people who are just like, is this an American? Why is he so articulate with Japanese? And I don't know. It's like, I tried a lot. I'm a try hard. I just, when I want to learn something, I just go to it. That's why I'm like the worst person to ask for tips. They're just like, hey man, how do I get better Japanese? I'm just like, do it. I don't just.
I feel like that makes you the best person to ask for tips because you're not
Right.
going to try and sell them a fake shortcut. You're
That's
going to
true.
tell them work hard and practice every day. Otherwise, you'll wind up like me, illiterate and stupid.
Oh, I thought you meant like.
I
You
think
mean
you
me?
should.
No, I don't mean
Gosh, both of you.
We're really digging
No,
into
I'm-
each other
I'm
today.
I'm
You'll
over
end
here
up
like
like me.
seething slightly because like you're selling yourself short and you're like, oh, I only got that job because of nepotism. Meanwhile, you're like, I studied hard every day to connect to myself, to become literate in my culture's language and to become more connected to it. I worked ridiculously hard so that a
Right.
friend of mine who is also just as determined would think of me as well for projects. Like, that doesn't sound like nepotism to me. That sounds
Yeah.
like you had a
Yeah.
friend who knew you were more than qualified because you work hard and you're really smart. And I don't
Right.
think you should sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Well, it's all kind of facetious.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not really nepotism. I'm just saying, like, the stars aligned very well for my specific skill set. Like, if I
But
hadn't
hard work and preparation
It is,
beating an opportunity.
Plus, there can only be one imposter, and that's me.
Yeah, I think
I'm
we're all
not gonna allow that either. Don't make me come over there. I know you live in Miss Texas.
Plot twist, I'm the imposter as I don't speak Japanese.
Hey, but you're the only one in a Hunter x Hunter shirt.
Yeah, and all of you
Explain that.
you know your reviews are banging, so don't even.
Okay, on this lovely note where we're all showering each other in love. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we're going to wrap up part 1 with some quick Q&A. We've gotten some great questions in. Since we've only got about 5 minutes, we are going to have to answer them a little fast, but I want to get to them because there's some really good questions that were asked in the chat. This one is kind of more towards QA work. When it comes to working on volumes versus chapters, does the QA process typically have previous editors or translators coercing about their notes to make a cohesive or cleaner translation?
Oh, is this?
It's a QA question.
Yay!
But I guess anyone, is there notes and things? Yeah.
So I'll say in my experience, I'm only given projects either where maybe the previous editor is unavailable. I'll use my case with the light novel, and I can just say the company in the light novel. I worked on volume 2 of, I believe its full title is Another World Zombie Apocalypse Is Not My Problem, something like that.
Yeah.
And I came on specifically because the primary editor was unavailable. So, but like I was given essentially like a Bible of every term that they edited, everything that they had used. I was given the previous volume. I was giving all of their notes because I had to emulate their editing style for consistency. So usually in cases where I'm given a volume and I'm the first person, obviously I get to kind of set how I'm going to edit it within a style guide. But in cases where I come on and I'm like editing the 5th volume, usually I do the work of reading through the previous volumes to kind of see how someone either edited or proofread things. And I try to keep that consistent so that someone wouldn't know there was a change of person.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think you could probably apply that to chapters.
Yeah. So speaking of, I know, David, you mentioned fan translation work. We did get a question along those lines of and they say, outside of, legality, what do fanlations miss that professional translators do in work?
I mean, it depends on what they are. I mean, there are some fan translators that are just basically professional translators that haven't gotten their break. And I mean, you can't really paint everything under the same swath. I mean, like, everything's not, the same. Like, these fan translations of this light novel, or this fan translation of this visual novel, or the fan translation of this manga are different from one another. It's like apples to oranges, really. So I don't think there's generally anything that, I mean, sometimes you can, like, I've seen some fan translations of like series that I'm on, and I'll be like, like they like kind of miss stuff, and it's just like, or sometimes they completely miss stuff. I mean, like, but it depends on the translator. I mean, if it's like a dude who's like really devoted, or like he's a native speaker, or it's like, someone who's like just out of high school or getting into college, he took his first Japanese course and he's like, let me just translate this dope manga that I read or something like that. But like, not everyone has the same level of commitment to translation. So I mean, I can't really say anything for or against, because it's all different.
The final question we had was, I know there can be plenty of control over what ends up in the final release, and that is out of your hands. But how much room is there for you to make suggestions for a series in any category or phase of its publication, be it digital or physical?
I'll say the first example that comes to mind, and I'll go back to the visual novel I did. I was able to sneak a lot of slang into it. And because I was given a little bit freer reign because of one of the characters I worked with, I was able to sneak like things like galaxy brain in, and it was just okay. I don't know if it had been in a different context. Like, it worked because it was a modern setting that I was given kind of free reign to be a lot more creative. I don't think that would have worked if it was like in 1920s Japan. So I guess what I'm saying is it depends, right? Every case is different on how much of a leash you're given. And that can be good. I think that can be good. It can, be frustrating, but it can be good.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the IP too. Like, if you're working on a fresh IP and you're like the only person to ever touch it, then you can kind of set the, like, what terminology and stuff like that is, how people should speak, how people should, sound in the context of the manga. But like, if it's like a old IP or something, like maybe you've got Full Metal Alchemist or like Dragon Ball or something like that, you gotta adhere to those like old, like whatever the old thing was, you have to kind of adhere to it. But like, if it's like a new property, like with Undead Unluck, I'm basically given carte blanche to do what I want, but I still have to keep it like sensible. Like, I can't just like go completely off the rails. Like, if I want a character to sound like I think he would sound like in English, then I will make them sound like that. There's a character in Undead Unluck that speaks like a baby in English because they sound like a baby in Japanese. They say nanora at the end of their sentences, like with the VTuber. And like, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna make her say a goo in English. I'm gonna make her
a goo.
I'm gonna say a goo at the end of the sentences. So like, I have some free reign, but like, at the end of the day, when it goes to publishing and there's all those eyes on it, like, there's at least, I don't know how many people looking at one volume of manga over VizSide at least, but like, there's a ton of them, and if they want something changed, or if there's something that they want, editorial wants, editorial will do. Like, that's what editorial will do. I have no say over that unless I see something that's like a blatant mistake and they had missed it, and I like, which has happened, which has been like because of my shortcomings, not finding it when I should have during the process that they gave me, like the time frame they gave me. I'll bring it up to them, and usually they don't chew my butt out. Like, I'll just, because friendly about it,
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, like I mean, it just depends. It depends on the company. It
Yeah.
depends on the IP. It depends on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one last question before we all sign off and wrap.
Okay.
Specifically for ThatCMonster,
Oh.
are any of your webtoons translated in other languages? Why or why not?
I have one translation actually. It's a fan translation. I found it on YouTube. So somebody has been translating it into Spanish.
Oh.
So that's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of neat from my perspective. I feel like if my webtoon were a little bit bigger, I would probably be like, oh no, let me do it officially. But as somebody who doesn't have the resources to do so and to
Yeah.
get it done officially to reach a wider audience, I feel kind of flattered. But I would like to say this is not a condoning. If there are official works that you're reading fan translations of, you should be buying merch or volumes so that you can continue to support the industry that you love so that it doesn't collapse in upon itself like a dying star. Because unlike what a lot of people think, anime as an industry is not an unlimited resource swimming in money.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
people don't make a lot of money in this industry. So you can actually hurt and sink publishing companies by taking scanlations and not putting anything back into it ever. Not to like guilt anybody, but I'm just saying like buying figures, buying merch, all of that, watching the ads on the anime, all of that helps. So like
Yeah.
do it if you can. But yeah, no, it's being fan translated into Spanish by somebody, so that's kind of cool. Otherwise, no, there's no official translation for No Such Thing. It's
Mm.
it's a baby comic. You know, we're at about 660,000 views over on Webtoon, so if you
Wow.
want to go read it, please go read it.
On that note, we're going to sign off on part one. Thank you all for listening. And if each person, we could go one by one and kind of give your sign off, say where people can find you, and maybe plug a bit of a project you're working on right now, starting with ThatCMonster, since we kind of got the ball rolling there.
Oh, well, there we go. You guys can find me everywhere at ThatCMonster, spelled with a C, so not SEA, just the letter C. And you can find me at ThatCMonster on everything. You can find me there on Webtoon. You can find me there on Twitter, on Twitch. My day job is a content manager, but I like to do voice acting, and my biggest thing right now is making comics. So if you guys want to go support my stream over here on Twitch, where I do live readings of webtoons, actually partially sponsored by Webtoon, you guys can hit that up. We usually have a lot of voice acting guests. If either of you would like to be on it and try your hand at doing some fun voices and LARPing Webtoons characters, we have a lot of creators come in to watch their comics live voice acted and improv. All the voices are chosen on the spot. So we do a lot of cold readings of everything, and it is a really fun time. So we do that on Wednesdays over on Twitch, and I do that with my friend Data Dave, who is also over here on Twitch. So if you guys want to give me a follow there and join us next Wednesday, the rest of the time we're basically playing RPGs, and we do talk a lot about like cultural context and give little language lessons. Mostly, the streams run like a bizarre fever dream. So just get ready for that. I also like to throw my voice around the room and pretend that other people are here. So that's weird. Probably shouldn't do that. Anyway, read my webtoon and join us for Webtoons Wednesday.
All right.
Oh wait, my webtoon's called No Such Thing. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Almost forgot to say what it was.
That's the most
David?
important part. Hi. Yeah. I'm at Twitter. I'm usually posting shit posts or pictures of me drunk or something. You know, whatever. It's not professional. My Twitter is it borders, it's like a hodgepodge. You can get a very insightful fact, or you can be like, my feet hurt. And it's like, okay, well, this guy's obviously not on the level. It's at Shin Hiroko on Twitter. The at symbol, SHINOROKO. I think I spelled that right. And yeah, I post about stuff that I'm working on and lots of other tidbits about, I don't know, like translation, and sometimes I post art And yeah, read Undead, Unluck and read Kaiju number 8. They're both on the Shonen Jump website and they're both free. So yeah, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. They're both two of my babies. I love them. I love working on Undead, Unluck, and I love working on Kaiju number 8, and they're both super sick manga that are doing numbers, and I'm very proud for them. So yeah, give them a follow. And I mean, like, if you want to follow me on Twitch, I guess I'm on Twitch too, but like I don't stream anymore. That's a
I'll follow you on Twitch.
Oh, okay.
Same.
That sounded vaguely threatening.
Oh, I'll follow you on Twitch and stab you in the liver.
But people, I mean, people could support your work by subscribing to Shonen Jump for $1.99 a month, couldn't
Yeah,
they?
it's the best deal in manga, man. Like I keep saying, I sound like such
backlog?
Yeah.
It's over 10,000 chapters.
There's also shoujo manga in there from a weird loophole with Besetsu Margaret, so you can read Boys Over Flowers on Shonen Jump.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you can. There's some other stuff in there that's not exactly from Shonen Jump, but Shueisha published that you can read in there.
You can read the best manga, The Emperor and I, which is about a high school girl and a penguin.
There
You know
we
you
go.
want that.
Oh,
You can read.
Want that.
You could read anything you want, and I'm literally lying to everybody. You can read anything you want in the Shonen Jump vault. For
okay, before
$2.99.
we make any more slightly false promises, Mercedes.
So, you can find me in a lot of places. Like I said, I split my time between being a journalist and critic and also doing localization work. So you can find me anywhere pretty much under the name Pixelated Lenses, especially on Twitter, where I talk a lot about the work I'm doing. I am a writer for the Anime News Network, and I am reviewing 4 anime this season. I also am a writer on But Why Though, as well as on the website Anime Feminist, where I am a staff editor. So yeah, come find me. That also sounded vaguely threatening.
That day is like, come find me. We'll
You
square
really
up.
can't say that without sounding vaguely threatening,
yeah.
can you? It's like,
You
Yeah,
can't,
but-
like, I'll follow you.
Yeah,
I'll
but you
find-
can find all of that under Pixelated Lenses. And I would love to meet you. So
Thank you all so much. Again, I'm Olive Sansevier, also known as All of the Manga. Yes, it's a play on all of the other reindeer if you go to my socials. Similarly to Mercedes, I also review anime and manga at But Why Though, and you can find me on Twitter where you'll see reviews and very annoying thirsts about anime wives and husbands and things like that.
I love your thirst though.
Thank you.
I love
I'm
it.
proud of them.
10 of 10 thirst.
Love it.
Oh, speaking of general thirst, have you ever read Blades of Furry?
It's on the list. And on that note,
Oh, time to open up a new Google tab.
thank you all, everyone.